If you're looking for a simple way to grow strawberries in your home garden, you may be considering growing them in a Greenstalk Vertical Planter. But which planter is going to be the best for growing strawberries? The original planter with the deep pockets or the leaf planter with the more shallow pockets? Last year I decided to put it to the test. I planted strawberries in both of these planters to see which one performed the best. Here we are over a year later, and I can share with you my observations throughout the year, which one I thought performed the best, some odd things that ended up happening that I think influenced the results, and finally, whether I truly believe it's worth it to grow strawberries in a Greenstalk Vertical Planter. For all the specific details on how I planted the strawberries in these planters this year, check out this video and you'll be able to see how I did it all. What you'll see is that I ended up planting 2 different varieties of strawberries, and that was key in my results. I planted the Eversweet strawberry and the Ozark Beauty strawberry. Both of those are ever-bearing varieties, which typically will bear all throughout the season. They just won't give those heavy yielding berries like the June bearing strawberries do. But I'm glad I ended up choosing 2 different varieties to try, because unfortunately the Eversweet ended up not doing well. However, the Ozark Beauty variety, they did fantastic. But I'm really glad I planted 2 varieties, because if I had just bought that one Eversweet and I planted it and everything died, I would have thought, okay, this didn't work, or I'm a bad gardener, or all the things we tell ourselves when we have a garden fail. But because the Ozark Beauty did so well, then I was able to move on and know that it wasn't a problem with the Greenstalk or necessarily me with a gardener. Within about 6 to 8 weeks, I had my first strawberries that had produced. Now I know you're really supposed to pinch off the blooms the first year, but hats off to you if you have the patience for that. I couldn't do it. I wanted to eat the strawberries, so I just let them bear. And then they started producing runners throughout the season. We ended up having a really hot and dry summer last year, and they pretty much all made it through the summer. If I lost any through the summer, it would have been the remaining Eversweets. I don't know that any of them actually made it all the way through the year, but the Ozark Beauty ones did. And the thing was, the Ozark Beauty strawberries did great whether I planted them here in the leaf planter or whether I planted them here in the original planter. They did great in both places. I will admit I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't get a longer harvest, because ever-bearing strawberries are supposed to give you harvest throughout the summer. Maybe it was the summer heat, I'm not sure, but I pretty much got a small harvest in the spring, not unlike what I would get with a June-bearing variety. When it came to fall and going into winter, I ended up taking my Greenstalk planters into the greenhouse. Not necessarily because I felt like I needed to. Strawberries will generally have no problem overwintering in the Greenstalk planters up to about zone 6. If you're in zone 5 or above, you might have to add a little bit of extra protection, such as putting it by your house or bringing them into a garage if you have a really bad cold snap or something like that. But in my zone 7, they would have been fine over the winter. I put them in my greenhouse though, because as the winter started to turn to spring and the lengthening daylight and the warm days started heating up the greenhouse, I found that the strawberries actually started coming out of dormancy earlier, even though I wasn't heating the greenhouse at that time. I ended up getting my first strawberry flower a couple of months ahead of when I saw any of them in my main strawberry patch in my garden. And so for that reason, I felt like that was a really good decision to shelter them a little bit, get them warm, and get the strawberries in production quicker. But again, not a necessary step. During that time also, I realized that because I lost about half of the strawberry plants because the Eversweets didn't do well last year, I ended up deciding to transplant all of them into one planter. I had more, I guess, that were in the leaf planter than I did the original planter, just because there's more pockets available here than there are the one that's a little bit deeper. So I transplanted all of the strawberries into the leaf planter. Having not been able to see really a difference in growth or production between the two, I thought, let's get them in the leaf planter and then I can use the original planter for something else. What I noticed when I started transplanting and putting them all into these 3 tiers right here is that the root systems were intact. They were really easy to transplant. I will say that the strawberries that had their root systems here in the original planter, the root systems did take up this entire pocket, so it was quite a bit bigger than the root systems of the ones that I transplanted into these bottom 3 tiers. But overall, as you can see, the strawberry plants have rebounded nicely. I've already been able to get a pretty decent harvest already. I would say maybe a bowl full a week or so when they first started coming on, and still got flowers here in May, so I have hope for even more. Maybe the second year I will get the strawberries all season long as compared to the first year. We'll see. But that pretty much tells you the answer to the biggest question I get asked, which one performed better? And so far I can say they were pretty much equal. So whether you have a original planter or a leaf planter, planting strawberries I think would work equally well in either one. Now that leads me to another question that people ask me, should I plant strawberries in a Greenstalk vertical planter? But I have to be honest with you, I'm a little conflicted when answering this question because I love my Greenstalk vertical planter so much that I'm not sure that I love having all of these pockets just for strawberries that will possibly only bear once a year, although like I said, I have hope that this will bear longer this season. But even with these 3 tiers, I'm only getting, a half of a bowl full a week. But the truth is I have to have quite a few plants just to get a handful. So when I consider that I have grown strawberries in my ground bed garden and my raised bed garden and now in the Greenstalk, what do I think is the best? Well, I really think it depends on what your goals are. One thing that I really have appreciated about the strawberries in the Greenstalk vertical planter is that they have been obviously a lot easier to harvest than having to bend over and pick the strawberries from my in-ground garden. I've not been able to do that this year because of my back problems, so that bed pretty much has been able to feed the birds, which is another thing. We have birds everywhere, but I have not noticed really any bird pressure on these. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't, they probably would, but I haven't noticed as much bird pressure here as I've noticed in my garden. Another thing that I think is a big thing is that the strawberries themselves on the vines haven't rotted because of heavy rains. I know I have that issue when we have a whole lot of rain in the spring. I'll go out there and the strawberries are waterlogged and they're starting to rot. They also battle slugs, especially if they're on the ground. I've not seen a single slug on any of these. So as far as ease of picking and then not losing as much to the heavy rains and to birds and other things, I feel like I have gotten a lot more strawberries off of here per plant than I would in my garden. That said, having this many strawberry plants, a total of 18 or so, that's enough to give us a little bit of snack every couple of days, but it's definitely not enough for me to be able to freeze and preserve like I like to do or make strawberry jam. Definitely not enough for that. So if I wanted to have enough strawberries to do more than snack on fresh, then I think I would need to have more space or like several Greenstalk planters devoted entirely to strawberries, which for most people is not realistic. Bottom line, I think growing strawberries in Greenstalk planters depends on what your goal is. If you just want to have a snack that you can come snack on, if you have kids and it's easy for them to come and munch on the strawberries, I think that's a fantastic idea. If you're wanting to grow a lot to be able to freeze and have jams and jellies and things like that, I really think you're going to have more space. Personally, having grown them in Greenstalk planters and in raised beds and in the ground, I've had my best harvest growing in raised beds. Now, I say that because I grow June-bearing varieties in my raised beds in the ground. I've never grown June-bearing in the Greenstalk, so that may be a little bit of a difference as well. For me, I do enjoy having the strawberries in the Greenstalk to come out and enjoy in the spring and have that snack. But in my opinion, where the Greenstalk planters shine is where you see here, being able to have arugula all summer long. And look at this video to see how I do that with my Greenstalk. Being able to grow this lettuce in greens in the spring and in the fall. To me, that is the best use of the Greenstalk planter. And in this one, I actually have some marjoram and then some cilantro that started to bolt, some parsley I just planted, some parsley down here. So this is really good for some of those herbs that don't get too big of root systems. And then in my other Greenstalk planters, I grow bush beans and peppers and tomatoes. This year I'm trying potatoes. We'll see how that goes in the Greenstalk. So there's so many different options to grow in the Greenstalk. Strawberries are just one of them. I think if strawberries is a focus for you, this is a great choice, whether you go with the original or the leaf. but the other options in the Greenstalk are well worth considering as well, just depending on your space and what you want to grow where. For more videos on everything I grow in my Greenstalk and how I take advantage of this fantastic, hands-free, virtually easy way to garden and grow my own food, check out this playlist right here where you can see how I'm using all of my Greenstalks in my garden. I hope you've enjoyed this update, and for more updates going throughout the garden season, be sure to subscribe for future videos. Thanks so much for joining me today.